At 95 years old now, Clint Eastwood has finally decided to open up and talk about Inger Stevens after keeping quiet for so long. Clint Eastwood's full name at birth was Clinton Eastwood Jr., and he came into the world on May 31, 1930, right in San Francisco, California. He was a kid growing up smack in the middle of the really rough and scary days of the Great Depression when money was super tight for almost everybody. Because his dad kept hunting for steady, reliable jobs, the whole family had to move from place to place pretty often, and that kind of unsteady childhood quietly taught Eastwood how to depend only on himself and stay calm and tough-looking no matter what. Nobody ever planned or trained him from a young age to be a glamorous movie star someday. He was tall and lanky with a soft, low voice, so he grew up without that slick, shiny, perfect Hollywood leading man style most big stars had back then. Once high school was finished, he jumped around doing all sorts of everyday, hard-working jobs to get by. He chopped down trees as a lumberjack, saved people at the beach as a lifeguard, pumped gas and fixed cars as a gas station attendant. Those real, sweaty, normal jobs kept him connected to regular American life, and later made him feel so believable and down-to-earth when he acted on camera. Getting into acting didn't happen fast or easy for him. It was a slow, unsure road at first. After he finished his time serving in the United States Army during the Korean War years, he got more serious about becoming an actor, so he studied acting classes and grabbed whatever small roles he could find all through the 1950s. In those early days, he really struggled to get noticed because the big Hollywood studios looked at him and thought he acted too awkward and didn't show enough feelings on his face. His first real success didn't come from big movies. It came from television when the producers picked him to play the cowboy character Rowdy Yates in the very popular long-running Western TV series Rawhide that aired from 1959 all the way to 1965. Being on Rawhide week after week made his face familiar to millions of people at home and taught him how to act strong, determined, and in control using only a few words or even just a hard stare. That quiet, no-nonsense way of performing slowly became the special thing everyone remembers about him. Then true huge fame all over the world hit him hard in the middle of the 1960s, thanks to teaming up with the Italian director Sergio Leone, who saw something special in him. Leone put him as the main character in the famous three-movie series people call The Man with No Name trilogy. First A Fistful of Dollars in 1964, then For a Few Dollars More in 1965, and finally The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly in 1966. With those movies, Eastwood completely changed what a Western film could look and feel like. He played a mysterious stranger wrapped in a poncho, always squinting under his hat, who wasn't really a classic good guy or bad guy. He did things mostly for money and handled problems in a fast, brutal, no-nonsense way. That rough, morally gray character was the total opposite of the smiling, clean-shaven, perfect cowboys everybody saw in older Hollywood westerns. Those three films didn't just bring Western movies back to life. They turned Clint Eastwood into one of the biggest global movie stars ever, the tough new symbol of a grittier, more real kind of manhood that regular people everywhere really loved and related to. Moving into the 1970s, Eastwood locked in that super tough image forever with the very famous and very talked about Dirty Harry movie series that started with Dirty Harry in 1971. Playing the no-rules cop Inspector Harry Callahan, he perfectly showed how angry and scared everyday people felt about rising crime, huge social changes happening fast, and not trusting the police or government anymore. Lots of critics complained that the film seemed to cheer for people taking justice into their own hands. But at the same time, those movies started serious, real discussions everywhere about fairness, who should have power, and what it means to be personally responsible. Eastwood was brave enough to step into those complicated love them or hate them roles, and it proved he had a sharp sense for exactly what was bothering people in the culture right at that moment. Still, even with all his famous acting, Clint Eastwood's biggest and longest-lasting gift to movies is what he did as a director. Starting in the early 1970s, he began making his own films, and he brought a very focused, quick-working, and personally meaningful style to directing. A lot of actors who switch to directing take time to earn respect, But Eastwood got people's admiration behind the camera almost immediately. He liked to shoot long, continuous takes, hated wasting time on endless rehearsals, and always wanted the actors to feel natural instead of stiff, which let them really live inside their characters. As the years passed, the stories in his movies turned more and more inward and thoughtful, quietly exploring big ideas like growing old, looking back with regret, searching for forgiveness, the real damage of violence, and what happens after bad choices. Eastwood proved he could direct almost any kind of story with skill. He even took his own famous tough guy image, turned it around, and questioned it deeply in the powerful film Unforgiven in 1992. A dark, serious Western that honestly showed how much violence really costs and how dangerous it is to build up violent legends. That one movie won him 2 big Academy Awards, Best Director and Best Picture, proving once and for all that he was one of the most important filmmakers alive. After that, he kept going strong with other deep movies like the emotional crime story Mystic River in 2003, the touching boxing drama $1 Million Baby in 2004, the huge war film Letters from Iwo Jima in 2006, the heartfelt Gran Torino in 2008, and the intense American Sniper in 2014, showing he could handle close-up human feelings, real history, and complicated questions of right and wrong with the same confidence every time. Then in 2018, when he was already very old, Clint Eastwood gave everyone one of the most quietly moving and powerful performances of his later years in the movie The Mule. That film didn't feel like a normal, exciting crime story. It felt more like a slow, thoughtful look at getting older, carrying regrets, and maybe finding a little peace before it's too late. He both directed the movie and played the main part, bringing to life the unbelievable but true story of an old man named Leo Sharp Sr., a brave World War II veteran who, in his last years, secretly started working as a drug courier for the dangerous Sinaloa drug cartel. The wild idea of a gray-haired grandpa managing to hide from the police while secretly moving giant loads of illegal drugs made the whole movie instantly interesting and full of suspense. But what really made The Mule special was the gentle, human way Eastwood told it. He made you care about the man behind the crime. This was Eastwood's first time acting in a movie since Trouble with the Curve back in 2012, so after 6 long years away from the screen, fans were excited and a little worried that maybe their favorite tough star had quietly retired for good. Even more meaningful, it was also the first movie where he both starred and directed since Gran Torino in 2008, which made it clear how much this particular story mattered to him personally. At his age, when he stepped into that role, everything about him felt completely real and lived in. The deep lines on his face, the slow, careful way he moved, and his rough, gravelly voice all quietly told the story of many decades passing by without him saying a single extra word. A lot of Eastwood's movies show he has huge respect for people following their own conscience and owning up to their actions, even when those people are very imperfect and make big mistakes. He never tries to avoid the hard, messy parts of right and wrong. He picks stories that make you think and ask tough questions instead of handing out easy, happy endings. Because he stays true to those deep ideas year after year, his films keep feeling fresh and important, and people discover new layers in them every time they watch again. Clint Eastwood's love life away from the cameras has always been just as complicated, full of drama, and attention-grabbing as any of the characters he played in his movies, stretching across many decades and showing both his restless energy and the way Hollywood and relationships changed over time. Way back on December 19, 1953, when he was just starting to become known, Clint Eastwood married a woman named Maggie Johnson, who ended up being a big part of his life for more than 30 years. Their marriage held on through his early tough, struggling days, then through his sudden jump to massive fame, and all the way to him becoming one of the most famous men on Earth. Together they raised 2 children, their son Kyle, who was born in 1968 and later followed a path in music and some acting, and their daughter Allison, who was born in 1972 and grew up to work in movies too, both as an actress and a director like her famous father. Even though they shared so many years, the marriage finally broke apart because of Eastwood's non-stop busy career and some of the personal choices he made along the way. They separated in 1984, and when it was all over, Maggie Johnson reportedly received a very large divorce settlement somewhere between $25 and $30 million, quietly closing one of the longest-lasting and most low-key marriages in all of Hollywood history. All during those same years, he was also in a serious, long relationship with a dancer and actress named Roxanne Tunis that went from 1959 until 1973. That relationship gave him a daughter named Kimber, who was born in 1964. For many years, almost nobody in the public knew anything about this side of his life, which helped build his reputation as a man who kept his private world locked up tight even when cameras and fans were everywhere. Then in 1975 he started one of the most public, talked about, and sometimes stormy relationships of his whole life when he moved in with the actress Sandra Locke. They were a couple in real life and also worked together on several movies that became really connected to the way Eastwood's on-screen character was changing and growing. Sandra Locke was right there with him during some of the most creative and busy years of his career as both actor and director, and their romance kept the Hollywood gossip writers busy for a long time. But behind closed doors, things were not always smooth or happy. During those years, many people believe Eastwood had other romantic relationships on the side and fathered at least 3 more children. And all of that later helped make their breakup in April 1989 so painful, angry, and very public. One of those less publicized relationships was a private affair with a flight attendant named Jocelyn Reeves. From that relationship came 2 more children, a son named Scott, who was born in 1986 and later built his own successful career as an actor, and a daughter named Catherine, who was born in 1988. At first, those kids grew up mostly out of the bright Hollywood lights, but over time they were quietly welcomed as part of Eastwood's larger family, showing just how big and spread out his family tree really became. After the split from Sandra Locke, Eastwood began seeing actress Frances Fisher for a while. Even though their time together was shorter, they had a daughter named Francesca, who was born in 1993. Francesca later stepped into the spotlight herself, appearing in movies, on television, and even in reality shows, and she has sometimes spoken openly and honestly about how strange and complicated it felt to grow up inside such an unusual, non-traditional family setup. It looked for a little while like he might have finally found something calmer and more stable when he married television news anchor Dina Ruiz on March 31, 1996. That marriage started what felt like a fresh, new chapter for him, and later the very same year they had a daughter together named Morgan Eastwood. For some years the relationship seemed to bring a little more peace and grounding into the life of the legendary tough guy filmmaker. But things changed again, and by August 2013, Dina Ruiz publicly said they had started living in separate homes, and the marriage officially ended with a divorce in 2014, quietly finishing yet another long chapter in Eastwood's very eventful romantic history. Looking at all the decades together, Clint Eastwood has become known far and wide as the father of at least 8 children with 6 different women, although he has always stayed very quiet and never publicly confirmed the exact total number. Just like so many of the lonely, mysterious, super-independent characters he loves to play on screen, Eastwood himself has always kept a careful, deliberate distance whenever anyone asks about his personal or family life. What everyone can agree on is that his own real-life story, packed with love, arguments, hidden things, and a big family legacy, is every bit as layered and interesting as the man people have watched on movie screens for generations. Now that he's reached 95 years old, Clint Eastwood has arrived at a point in life where memories feel sharper, quiet thinking comes easier, and telling the truth seems more important than ever. For most of his life, he was famous for staying reserved and almost never wanting to dig into his private relationships in public interviews. He very rarely talked at length about the different people who came into his world for a short but powerful time and then left. But as he got older and wiser, he finally chose to speak openly about one of the most touching and haunting people from his very early Hollywood years, the beautiful and talented actress Inger Stevens. When he talks about her now, his words aren't loud, dramatic, or full of gossip. They're gentle, slow, careful, and carry the heavy feeling of so many years gone by. Thinking back on Inger Stevens, Eastwood points out again and again how much the world got her completely wrong if they only judged her by what they saw on the movie screen. People thought they really knew Inger just because she was so stunningly beautiful, he said, but honestly, that was only the tiniest, most surface part of who she truly was. To him, she was never just another pretty face or glamorous starlet of the late 1950s and early 1960s. She was a serious, thoughtful woman who felt things very deeply and carried a kind of quiet inner weight and strength that almost no one around her seemed to notice or understand. He still remembers clearly how smart she was and how much she thought about life in a way that stood out in an industry that usually cared way more about how people looked than what was really going on inside their minds and hearts. Eastwood has also shared how big the difference was between the bright, smiling Inger everyone saw in public and the hidden sadness she carried inside every day. She had this soft, quiet sadness always around her, he admitted. And back in those days, nobody ever talked openly about heavy things like depression or feeling terribly lonely. In that older time, you were pretty much expected to put on a happy face, keep smiling, and just push forward no matter how much it hurt inside. Back when almost nobody admitted they were struggling with mental health and nobody showed much kindness or real help for it, Inger Stevens's deep inner pain stayed almost completely invisible to the people around her. Looking at it now with old eyes, Eastwood believes that whole culture of staying silent and pretending everything was fine was one of the worst things Hollywood got wrong in those years. It rewarded people for acting perfect on the outside while punishing anyone who dared show real weakness or need. When he thinks back, he feels genuine regret that he, like so many others, didn't have the emotional understanding or the right words to see and help what Inger was quietly going through. I was so much younger then, he reflected, completely caught up in building my own career, chasing my own dreams and goals. I just didn't realize how much terrible pain a person could keep completely hidden behind a calm smile and a steady face. He isn't pointing fingers or trying to blame anyone. He's simply being honest about how being young and living in that particular time made it almost impossible to notice or understand someone else's hidden suffering. With all the perspective that only decades can bring, he now clearly sees how easy it is for real pain to get completely missed and ignored when the spotlight stays fixed only on success, beauty, and being famous. The tragic way Inger Stevens died in 1970 left a permanent, deep mark on Clint Eastwood's heart, even though for many, many years afterward he almost never mentioned it in public. When a loss like that happens to someone you knew, he said quietly, it never really leaves you. It stays somewhere inside forever. You don't forget it, even when you choose not to talk about it out loud. He believes that long silence wasn't because he didn't care at all. It was more like a kind of unfinished, quiet grief he carried with him all those years while he kept busy making movies and directing. Her death turned into one of those private, unspoken chapters in his life that quietly shaped the way he felt about people and the world without him ever putting it fully into words. In these later years when he reflects on her, Eastwood talks about some important lessons that Inger's life and her sad ending taught him over time. It really opened my eyes to the fact that every single person is fighting some kind of battle inside, he said. You usually can't see it on the surface, and sometimes you only figure it out when it's already too late to do anything. He feels that new awareness quietly changed the way he created characters, chose which stories to tell, and even the way he tried to treat people when the cameras weren't rolling. So many of his films that focus on loneliness, facing hard moral choices, and wrestling with inner pain probably carry a small, hidden echo of those early, painful lessons from knowing Inger. Today at 95, when he speaks about her, there's a calm, clear-eyed honesty instead of big dramatic regret or showy emotion. Inger deserved so much more than to be remembered only for the tragic way she left us, he said. She was incredibly talented, very thoughtful, and unusually sensitive in a hard world that never really learned how to look after or protect people like her. His words come across less like a guilty confession and much more like a gentle, respectful tribute. An honest effort to bring fairness and balance back to her story instead of letting it stay stuck only on sadness and loss. In the end, when Clint Eastwood finally shares these thoughts about Inger Stevens, it tells us just as much about who he has become as it does about her. It shows a man who has been slowly shaped and changed by the passing of time, by losing people he cared about, and by the hard, slow lessons that only come with getting very old. You get older, he concluded softly, and you finally realize how little you actually understood back when you were young. All any of us can do now is hold on to the memories and try our best to pay closer attention and be kinder while we still have time left. By choosing, at long last, to speak about Inger Stevens, Clint Eastwood isn't handing out juicy Hollywood gossip or shocking new secrets. Instead, he's giving something much more rare and beautiful, a moment of quiet, real empathy, spoken from the very far edge of one incredibly long, full life.